House Republicans are helping to bring more accountability to Washington and doing so through various committees and subcommittees, including the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. On Friday, House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan and Ranking Member of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, Ted Cruz, sent a letter to the Federal Trade Commission raising questions about the agency's conduct. The letter came after the Weaponization Subcommittee released an alarming report about the FTC's harassment of Twitter during the time that Elon Musk was working to acquire the company. It also came after Thursday's hearing on the Twitter files, where Republicans dug deeper into what has come to light since Musk's acquisition of Twitter. Is the new subcommittee doing more than just ruffling feathers? I think it is. Joining me now to discuss this is Congresswoman Harriett Hageman. She serves on the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. She represents Wyoming's at-large district. Congresswoman, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony, for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, let's start off with last week's Twitter file hearing. It was a bit explosive, I think. It was the second hearing since its creation. What were your takeaways from that hearing?
A couple of things. One is the Democrats are no longer pretending about whether they care about the Bill of Rights or not. It was very clear that the members of the opposing party does not believe that they do not believe that we have a First Amendment right to speak. They do not believe that we have a First Amendment right to hear. And as importantly, what came out during the course of that hearing was they do not believe that there is a freedom of the press. It was stunning to me how they attacked the witnesses, both of whom are avowed Democrats and supporters, or at least voted for Joe Biden. It was stunning to me at how they attacked everything associated with bringing transparency to what has happened in terms of the federal government weaponizing against conservatives and against the freedom of speech. So for me, it was a revelation that we are no longer dealing with an opposition party that agrees with us on certain basic foundational issues, which is that the Bill of Rights are sacrosanct. What we are dealing with is an opposing party that wants to do away with the civil liberties that are guaranteed to us by that Constitution.
That is alarming when you see a party that is committed to trampling upon First Amendment freedoms. Another takeaway for me as I watched the hearing and read some of the testimony is that the FBI's interaction with Twitter, which has been a focal point of the information that's come forward since the Twitter files, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we've seen the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission's interactions, and what was revealed in the report that came out last week. Speak to that issue.
Well, one of the things that was very interesting is that the way that the FBI went about this was that they would contact Twitter. We know that they did it with the other social media companies as well. We just don't have the records at this point. But they would contact Twitter and they would send an entire list of people that they wanted to have their tweets removed. And Matt Taibbi in your previous clip referred to this. And what they would say is these tweets appear to violate your terms of service. Now, why in the world is a federal agency, and most specifically the FBI, probably the most powerful organization, agency in the country that can go after people for criminally, why in the world would the FBI be concerned about enforcing a company's private term of service? Obviously, the First Amendment is much broader than any term of service between myself and Twitter or myself and Facebook. Yet that's how they convinced Twitter to take down these tweets, is they would say these tweets don't appear to be illegal. They don't violate the First Amendment. They don't have any kind of a federal nexus other than that we want them taken down because we disagree with what is being stated. And they use the terms of service to do that. We've also learned that the FTC has been targeting Twitter and Elon Musk since last fall, at least, harassing him for his efforts to purchase this company and bring some transparency to what has been going on between these social media companies and the federal government.
That's exactly why this committee is there, the weaponization of the federal government, the government using these agencies to harass the American people. I mean, this is something you would see from a communist country, from Russia, from China. This is happening right here in the United States. Now, I know you're a seasoned attorney. You've taken on the federal government back in your home state of Wyoming. And so I'm not asking you to prejudge anything, but based upon what you have seen thus far, is there a good chance we're going to see someone held accountable in our government for violating the First Amendment freedoms of Americans?
There needs to be somebody held accountable. The people who have done this need to be held accountable. And it's why I have repeatedly said that we need to not just look at the FBI as an agency. We need to be naming names. We need to identify the individuals that were involved in this suppression of people's First Amendment rights, and they need to be prosecuted for their effort to do so. The individuals that they targeted should bring a First Amendment lawsuit against the federal government under Section 1983, and they ought to seek damages as well as attorney's fees. So yes, I want people to be held accountable. I want the agencies to be held accountable, but I want the individuals in those agencies to be held accountable, because it is the only way we're going to be able to stop this kind of nonsense in the future.
And of course, some of this being criminal, it's going to be difficult to get the Biden administration to get their Department of Justice to take any action. So we're going to have to look to the courts to be the remedy here for the aggrieved parties.
That's right. But again, there are mechanisms, there are avenues to do that. And I am hoping that the people who were targeted by the FBI and other agencies are willing to proceed and bring lawsuits against the federal government for violation of their First Amendment rights.
So what should we be looking for next, Harriet, coming from the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Government?
Well, we continue to delve into these First Amendment issues. Twitter is just one of the companies that they were working with, as I mentioned before. We have U.S. senators that were targeted by the FBI as they attempted to expose what was on the Hunter Biden laptop. Most specifically, whether we know that Joe Biden was involved in his involvement with foreign countries and taking funds from foreign countries. We had the testimony from Tulsi Gabbard. We also need to be addressing this from the standpoint of surveillance. We know that the federal government has been surveilling us on a lot of different levels. And one of the ways that they've been doing it is contacting these social media companies, and these social media companies, without any kind of a search warrant or any adherence to the Fourth Amendment, have been turning over personal data. So I think surveillance is another issue that we need to look into as to why our federal government has been weaponized against us individually. And again, I know I sound like a broken record, but it is a violation of the Constitution of the United States of America for the federal government to be engaging in these behaviors.
You have to keep repeating it until people actually hear it and do something with it. So I would say be a broken record. This is so fundamental to the future of this country. If we don't get this right, we cannot correct the other problems in our country. So you're absolutely right to focus on this. Now, we just have about a minute and a half left. I want to switch gears very quickly. I want to get your thoughts on the historic bank failure that is making headlines. As a member of the anti-woke caucus, and also someone known for exposing mismanagement, particularly when it comes to the federal land and wildlife of the federal government. The ESG policies, the wokeness in the banking industry, is that a part of what we see unfolding here?
It absolutely is. And the reason that you have a federal government, primarily through agencies and executive order, forcing this ESG and DEI nonsense on the banks is because neither one of this type of approach to banking doesn't work. If it was profitable, if it was more profitable than simply looking and following the fiduciary duties that these banks have, they would have been pursuing the DEI ESG step without the federal government attempting to force it. So there's a couple of things I want to say. Number one, I have said for a long time that Democrats destroy everything that they touch. And this is an example of that. They have stepped into the financial arena. They're attempting to force a philosophy, an agenda into our banking system to limit our access to capital unless we believe a certain way.
Yeah.
That's wrong. But something else, this is an example of the government is always trying to fix its last solution. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Good stuff, Harriet. Always great to talk to you. Thanks so much, Congresswoman Hageman, for joining us today.
Thank you, Tony.
And keep repeating it. We've got to stop this violation of our First Amendment freedoms. You're absolutely right.
Yes.